When secondary season comes around in the med school application cycle, the essays start to pile up fast. If you haven't planned ahead, you could end up burned out and overwhelmed, resulting in poorly planned, lackluster essays submitted too late. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's no need to generate totally new content for every single essay on your to-do list. In this video, we're going to show you how to drastically improve the efficiency of your secondary essay writing process. We'll go over the 3 key steps you need to know, and then we'll show you an example of how to adapt any essay for more than one prompt, saving you precious time during secondary season. But before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can be the first to see our new uploads with all the latest updates and guidance on med school admissions. Okay, let's jump into it. In the thick of secondary season, you might be tempted to just copy-paste the same essays into multiple different secondary applications after swapping out the names of the medical schools. That would certainly save you a lot of time, but faster is not objectively better when it comes to secondaries. Adcoms will probably be able to tell if you're just reusing the same essays for multiple different schools. Not to mention, taking this route leaves room for you to commit the ultimate mistake, forgetting to swap out school names. Plus, failing to tailor each essay to the specific school you're applying to means you fail to demonstrate fit, a crucial component in any secondary application. With all that said, this video isn't about creating a one-size-fits-all template so you can crank out 10 essays every afternoon. It's about doing your future self a favor by starting the brainstorming and pre-writing process early and learning to strategically adapt your essays so they thoroughly address the prompt and wow adcoms. You can begin the pre-writing process for your secondary essays as soon as you finish writing your personal statement and activities section. We strongly recommend devoting at least a couple of hours per day to pre-writing during the waiting period between submitting your primaries and receiving your secondaries. We can break this process down into 3 steps. Step 1 is pre-writing for each prompt type. Nearly every secondary essay can be sorted into one of the following 6 categories: diversity, adversity, why us, gap year, leadership, and additional information. In this step, you'll want to spend some time brainstorming potential anecdotes, stories from your own life, that you'd like to include in essays for each of these categories. To begin, try coming up with 3 to 4 different ideas in response to each of the following brainstorming questions. 1. What elements of my upbringing have shaped my identity, and how have I interacted with people who come from vastly different backgrounds than me? 2. What are some of the most difficult challenges I faced in my life? What have I done to overcome them, and how have those experiences shaped me? 3. Why am I applying to medical school? Note that more preparation will be done for the YS category of secondaries in step 2. 4. If applicable, why did I choose to take time off between college and med school, and how did I grow and refine my goals during this time? 5. What is my leadership style, and in what settings have I demonstrated my leadership skills? And 6. What are some other significant experiences, skills, or interests I haven't yet written about? After you've jotted down your ideas in response to each of these questions, it's time to flesh them out. For each idea you've written down, set a timer for 15 minutes and free write whatever details come to mind. Don't worry about perfection at this point. If your brain tries to tell you that's a stupid idea, just before you start to write something down, write it down anyway. The harder you are on yourself for not being able to come up with a good essay topic, the less likely you'll be to come up with one at all. Once your 15 minutes are up, skim over what you've written and underline anything that jumps out to you as interesting, funny, unusual, or particularly personal. Feel free to expand further on them, but most importantly, save them somewhere that you'll easily be able to locate when you receive your secondary prompts. As you work on your pre-writing, you should also take the time to look through the previous year's secondary prompts for each school you're applying to. Prompts often remain the same or similar from year to year, so this can give you a great idea of what to expect. And be sure to check out our secondary essay premium example library, where you can read examples of great essays in response to the prompts for every medical school in the US and Canada. Next, step 2 is researching each medical school you're applying to. During this process, you're not just looking for the basic facts you could easily find on their Wikipedia or official website. Instead, you need to dig up details about the school that you connect to on a personal level. If they received millions of dollars in grants from the National Institutes of Health last year, that's great, but it's an objectively great thing that literally any other applicant could, and likely will, write about. You'll want to dig deeper. What's one specific project or initiative that's being funded by a fraction of those millions of dollars? Why does that specific project interest you? Which professors and physicians are working on that project? How does the work they're doing relate to the clinical or research experiences you've already had? How does this all relate to your goals as a future physician? Our school-specific pre-med guides are a great place to start your school research, and they'll link you directly to the source of the information you seek so you can dive even deeper from there. You'll also need to learn about each medical school's institutional values. What matters to them? What do they pride themselves on? What is their collective identity? Browsing the About and Student Life sections of their official website might help you piece together the answers to these questions. Once you've done this, ask yourself which of your own personal values align with some of theirs so you can highlight them in your essays. Here's a pro strategy. You don't have to fake the notion that every single medical school you're applying to is your dream school. They don't expect you to flatter them, but they do expect you to care enough to figure out how you're going to make the most of your time at their institution. That's why phrases like, "this is my dream medical school," or "this medical school is the perfect fit for me," fall flat in secondary essays. Anyone can write that, but far fewer applicants can actually demonstrate how they'll actively work to make that school a great fit for them by pursuing and creating opportunities using the specific resources and structures in place there. Finally, step 3 is adapting your essays by combining your pre-writing with your research. Once you've completed the pre-writing and research steps, it's only a matter of time before you receive your secondaries. As soon as you get your prompts, start sorting them into the 6 categories we discussed earlier. Then, for each prompt, search through your pre-writing to find the story you want to tell. You'll probably find that the same anecdotes can be applied to several different prompts for several different schools. This is perfectly okay as long as you don't use the same anecdote in 2 different essays for the same school. A word of warning here. Read each of your prompts very carefully and multiple times. One of the most common mistakes med school applicants make is failing to answer their essay prompts thoroughly. This can be a result of skimming over the prompts too quickly, or it can also happen during the process of categorizing your essays. Remember, just because 2 prompts fall into the diversity essay category, that doesn't mean they're asking you for the exact same kind of essay. For example, some diversity essay prompts will ask you to write all about your cultural background and how it shaped your identity, while other prompts will ask you to write about a time when you had to work closely with someone whose background was different from your own. You might use the same anecdote for both essays, but you should emphasize different elements of that anecdote, getting to the heart of what each prompt is actually asking you to share. After you've thought about which stories you want to tell in response to which prompts, reflect on what you discovered in your own research about each school. Then start noting down which school-specific details you could naturally pepper into some of your essays. This part is most important for Why Us essays, which directly ask you to describe the things about their school that compelled you to apply. But it's also a good idea to intentionally demonstrate fit in at least 1 or 2 of your other essays for each school. Sometimes it may be as simple as explaining a core value you share with the school, whereas at other times you may find it appropriate to describe the specific courses and clinical experiences you look forward to taking on there. Now that we've covered the 3 steps, we're going to show you an example of how you can combine your pre-writing and your research to write a secondary essay. Then we'll show you an example of how you can save time by adapting that essay for a prompt from another school. Let's start with this secondary essay prompt from Stanford School of Medicine. Please describe which aspects of your life, experiences, interests, and character would help you to make a distinctive contribution to Stanford medicine. Your response must be 2,000 characters or fewer. This prompt is a sort of hybrid between the diversity and Why Us essay categories. It asks you to delve into the background and life experiences that make up your identity, but it also asks you to demonstrate your fit with Stanford Med. And crucially, when we take a magnifying glass to the wording of the prompt, we see that adcoms don't just want to know why Stanford Med is a good fit for you. They want to know why you are a good fit for Stanford Med. There are a lot of different directions you could take this essay, but the most efficient approach is to find something unique to Stanford that resonates with your own experiences, interests, or identity. Taking a look through our pre-writing and school research work, we can begin to draw on details from both as we craft our response to this prompt. For example, let's say that while pre-writing, you wrote down some memories about the numerous doctor's appointments you had while growing up. Let's say you also wrote about how you struggled to make friends after you had to quit sports due to your scoliosis. And let's say that you also jotted down some details about your journey toward studying bioengineering in college. Then during the school research phase, let's say you discovered that Stanford Med has a variety of student organizations and initiatives you'd like to get involved in, including Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Equity, and Inclusion, and medical students with disability and chronic illness. Taking these elements, we can construct the following essay in response to this prompt. At age 10, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. In order to correct my spinal curvature and alleviate pain, I had to undergo surgery and wear a back brace until the age of 17. This diagnosis and the subsequent treatments posed a significant challenge to my childhood and teen years. Before my diagnosis, I had been an avid soccer fan and player. Now I had to stay on the sidelines while my friends enjoyed competitive games. Some of those friends even distanced themselves from me, and I struggled to find other students who could relate to my experiences. Then, in 7th grade, in a desperate attempt to pass the time, I attended a chess club meeting. To my surprise, I met other students there who also had physical disabilities that prevented them from playing sports. For the first time in years, I felt like someone else understood me. We became quick friends, and few of us even discovered a shared passion for coding, which eventually set us on a path to study bioengineering in college. Over time, the more I excelled at chess and coding, the more I learned to value my personality traits and skills rather than my physical appearance or abilities. Most of all, I learned to treat others with compassion and empathy. Despite growing out of the need to wear a back brace, I haven't forgotten what it feels like to be treated differently due to a disability. I look forward to sharing my perspective with other future physicians by joining the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Equity, and Inclusion and medical students with disability and chronic illness. As a member of both of these organizations, I want to serve as an advocate for students, patients, and staff with disabilities of all kinds. This essay does a great job of synthesizing the two elements required by the prompt. The writer has provided a compelling personal story about the formation of their identity, and they've connected that to the contributions they hope to make to the Stanford Med community by joining organizations focused on disability advocacy. The level of personal detail and reflection incorporated into this essay makes it far more likely to stand out to adcoms than something surface level and cliche. Next, let's look at a prompt from UC Irvine School of Medicine. Please describe to the admissions committee a challenge or disappointment you have overcome and what you learned about yourself from that experience. This response must be 1,500 characters or fewer. This prompt falls into a different category than the Stanford prompt. Rather than a why us or a diversity essay, this one would most closely be defined as an adversity essay because it asks the applicant to write about a challenge they've overcome. However, if we take a closer look at our Stanford essay, we'll find that it can actually be easily adapted to respond to this UC Irvine prompt. We'll just need to make a few adjustments. First of all, in this essay, we'll need to focus more on the actual challenge of growing up with scoliosis and its emotional impact, as well as on the internal factors at play, like how the applicant grew and learned about themselves along the way. And since this essay's limit is 500 characters fewer than Stanford's, we can also trim some of the details about how the journey influenced the applicant's interest in chess and coding, since these are less relevant to UC Irvine's prompt. Finally, even though this prompt doesn't ask the applicant to explicitly demonstrate their fit with the university, like Stanford's prompt did, it can't hurt to subtly mention how this experience influenced the applicant's plans for what they hope to achieve at UC Irvine School of Medicine. With all this in mind, the Stanford essay could effectively be adapted for UC Irvine's prompt. At age 10, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. In order to correct my spinal curvature and alleviate pain, I had to undergo surgery and wear a back brace until the age of 17. Before my diagnosis, I'd been an avid soccer fan and player. Now I had to stay on the sidelines. But the hardest part was facing social stigma about my appearance. Friends distanced themselves from me. I was teased and I struggled to relate to my peers. When I started 5th grade, a month late due to my surgery, classmates said they were jealous of my extended summer vacation. Little did they know how painful the past 4 weeks had been. But the pain of feeling like an outsider was sometimes even worse than my physical pain. Over time, I learned that the best way to manage my scoliosis was to focus on what I could do rather than what I couldn't. In 7th grade, sheer boredom drove me to join the chess club. To my surprise, I fell in love with it. I even made some of my best friends there, students who also had physical disabilities that prevented them from playing sports. For the first time in years, I felt like someone else understood me. Despite growing out of the need to wear a back brace, I haven't forgotten what it feels like to have a visible disability. At UCI School of Medicine Center for Medical Humanities, I look forward to collaborating with faculty, physicians, and other med students to engage in research, mentorship, and community building among individuals living with a disability. With only a few minor tweaks, we've managed to transform an essay for Stanford School of Medicine into an essay responding to a totally different prompt for UC Irvine School of Medicine. This version maintains the compelling personal elements of the original essay, but instead of just focusing on how the applicant's unique life experiences will contribute to the institution's diversity, it directly addresses the prompt's requirement to discuss a challenge or disappointment they've overcome. In order to fit this essay into its 1,500 character limit, we've cut some of the extraneous details and focused more on the applicant's internal journey of overcoming their scoliosis diagnosis. And even though only the first prompt explicitly required the applicant to demonstrate fit, we found a way to do so naturally and effectively in the UC Irvine essay too, by mentioning specific ways the applicant plans to get involved on campus. These pre-writing, research, and adaptation strategies will save you time and prevent burnout during one of the most stressful periods in your med school application journey. And remember, med schools operate on a rolling admissions basis. So the sooner you submit your secondaries, the sooner med schools will have a chance to review your application and extend an interview to you. And the earlier you get an interview, the better, because there are a very limited number of seats within each med school's entering class, and those seats will fill up fast. Bearing all that in mind, don't rush too much to submit your secondaries. In most cases, submitting the secondary essays before they're ready could actually hurt your chances more than help them. But you shouldn't spend weeks worrying over word choice or rewriting the same essay a dozen times. If you've done your pre-writing work and put in the effort to produce a polished set of secondary essays, you can be confident in their quality. You should submit them in July if possible, and certainly by the end of August. As you make your way through the secondary essay pre-writing process, seek out examples of what makes a really strong submission. Check out our Secondary Essays Premium Example Library to browse over 1,000 essays in response to every single prompt for every medical school in the US and Canada. Finally, keep an eye out for our Secondary series, where we'll take you on a deep dive of all 6 secondary essay categories, one video at a time, and show you examples of how to take a weak essay and transform it into an excellent one.